Jason O'Shaughnessy, how are you going today?
Good, James. Weather's getting warm. Been going to the park a lot.
It's a pleasant change, isn't it, down
It
here in
is.
Victoria, sunny Victoria. Okay, so today's video that we're going to be doing is about the government, I guess you call them stimulus, now $1 million business loans that were previously 250 grand. So do you want to give us a bit of a background on where they come from and what they
Yeah.
were and what they are now?
Yeah. So there's two phases. So the first phase ended on the 30th September. The news phase started on the 1st of October. Essentially, they're loans that are 50% backed by the government, which means that the banks should be more willing to lend out the money if they are guaranteed to get half of it back from a government, essentially. So the
Yep.
first loans, the key criteria was that they're up to 250,000. They were for a term of 3 years with a 6 month deferral, and they were completely unsecured, meaning that the banks couldn't take any security, be it a property, a guaranteed indemnity, or a fixed charge over the company. There was 40 billion allocated. Only 2 billion was lent out across two lenders, being NAB and CBA. So look, there was some challenges with the scheme. You needed to show that you could afford the loan before COVID, and then when COVID impacted, obviously there was challenges to cash flow. So the
Yeah.
idea would be that they'll lend out the money for the period of when COVID was impacting, and then come 1st of October, we were in recovery. So
Yeah.
uh,
Okay. So I think, I mean, the impression everyone had when these were first released was that they were going to be sort of easy money for small business, but as it turned out, they're still subject to bank credit assessment criteria, and obviously less than 10% of the allocated pool
yeah,
has been used. Okay,
yeah.
so
I think it was because of the bank's discretion, essentially. So a couple of the banks said, "Yep, we're fully on board with these," and the others might have been like, "Well, maybe not."
not so sure. Okay, so that was phase one, and so what's changed now from 1st of October?
Yeah, so phase two is that theoretically we were meant to be in recovery mode. So they were increased to $1 million. So half of that still backed by the government. And it could be used for not necessarily to support businesses whilst we're going through the pandemic, but really to invest back into an economic recovery period. The discretion was now given to the banks that they could take security over these loans at any time, or and I guess the terms though were still 5 years, so it went up to 5 years.
Yeah, okay, so it went from 3 to 5 years, and there's still a 6 month deferral at the start if you need it in terms of payments.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, still the 6 month deferral if you want it, but knowing that you then have to pay back the loan over 4.5 years. So if you've got $1 million loan, pay it back over 4.5.
Yeah, okay. So the it's an interesting point. Even though the term of the loan's 5 years, sometimes the amortisation period's different to that in terms of the repayment period. But in this case, over that 5 or 4.5 years, the loan balance is progressively paid down to nil, which means you got pretty big monthly repayments starting at the 6 month point.
Yeah, it's pretty aggressive, and I think from the government's perspective, if they're going to be guaranteeing these loans for 5 years, we should be well out of COVID by then. So they
Yeah.
don't want any of these hanging around for any longer than that.
Yeah. Okay. And the pricing on these—they're not exactly cheap finance, are they?
Well, no, they've been rolled out with pretty rigid pricing, meaning that there's not necessarily the discretion that would otherwise be available to you. So look, it can they can range from, they are saying 2.95%, but that's fully secured with property,
Yeah.
all the way up to your 5 and your 6%.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not really a magic bullet necessarily, and if anything, it's gotten yes, the numbers are higher, but yeah, the banks have discretion to take security, so it's going to be fairly strict. So so what else needs to be considered when going for these, and what are the other options, do you think?
Yeah, I think the key is that these loans may help someone who was on the cusp of getting lending and may not have got it. And if that is the case, yeah, look, they may be able to get the loan now, but it's going to be within the confines of the restrictions that the government's placing over them. The majority of people who can get these loans will most likely have been able to get them previously anyway. So then you've got to ask yourself, well, would you enter into one of these loans where the pricing's rigid and the structure is quite rigid as well? Or do you in fact just apply and get a normal loan through a bank where you can extend out your terms and you can actually negotiate pricing up front, but really importantly in 2 years in and 3 years in?
Yeah, okay. So if you were sort of had a business that you were helping and they were sort of eligible for both, you would steer towards the more flexible sort of standard commercial?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've got a couple in at the moment where they will fall under the COVID loans, but I think when the terms come out, it will be probably better to do it outside of that.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's really interesting. And I did hear something a few weeks ago that they, given the, I guess the lack of success that the government have had in giving this money out, that they were thinking about some other arrangements to try and get money out there. I know in the UK they had a very similar scheme and it failed in terms of not enough money was lent. So they created a new scheme. So perhaps we'll follow something here. But that's great. So in short, Jason, they're not a magic bullet, and what you're saying is generally the people who can get them, the businesses who can get them, can typically get other commercial debt anyway.
I think the key is if you're thinking about investing and you hadn't thought potentially that you'd get the loan, now's the time to engage with the banks and have a conversation around, well, should it be a COVID loan? Should it not be a COVID loan? And compare apples with apples. Yeah, because for some people, hey, that they might not get it otherwise, and it is a really good time to jump in because you might get the finance that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Okay, great. And of course, you can help people if they want to have a chat about any of this stuff.
Yeah. Speak with me directly. Have a chat to anyone in the 360 team. We'll be able to at least engage with the banks and find out where you stand.
Outstanding. Well, look, Jace, thanks for that insight today. I mean, it's always helpful to get these updates about the new loans and what's going on. So that's great, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Cheers. Thanks, James.
Cheers.